Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the After School podcast. I am Professor Phoenix, and today we're going to be discussing a very controversial topic. Let me just finish setting up a few things here, and we'll get started. People were complaining last time that there wasn't a background music to listen to, so I've decided to include a little bit of lo-fi. Nothing too loud, obviously. I don't want to have that dominate. But this should be good for now. Okay, so as you can see from the thumbnail and from the title, we have a very interesting topic that I wanted to bring up this week because recently this debate flared up again after Starfield came out. There was a mod released by, what was his name, modder Pure Dark, who created a DLSS mod that allowed people to use DLSS technology for Starfield. However, here's where the controversy started. He locked it behind anyone with a 5-month Patreon subscription, essentially making it a paid mod. And people got upset about that because, well, in general, most people see mods as being needs to be free thing. And so then the debate flared up again about whether mods should be free, paid, and the whole can of worms just opened up again because this has been around for a long time. And I decided I wanted to break this down as much as we could and see just where we really stand on this issue. Because this is such a multi-layered issue, because it's not just about whether content should be free or not. It's about what should the players get out of this game? What should they expect and what do they deserve? What do the modders expect and deserve? And what about the devs? You know, the ones who actually made the game. What do they have a stake in when it comes to game mods? So I guess the first thing we need to really start with is, should game mods exist in the first place? And the obvious answer is yes. No one wants game mods to go away. They are a vital part of any game's community. And anyone who's played Terraria or Skyrim or Minecraft, God, Minecraft is like the king of this category. There is just a plethora of games that just have a huge, vibrant community built around mods. Because the idea of mods is we take a game that we already love, that we play a lot, and we're going to make it better. We're going to add to it. We're going to make something based off of something that we already love. It's like covering your favorite song, right? Or replicating someone else's art style. You're taking something that already exists and you're trying to add to it and make your own flavor on that thing. You're not trying to make it your own, hopefully, but you're adding something to it to make it better. And in general, from the start, game mods have always had the same pattern. They've been free and open for everyone to use, and for a good reason. Because if you try to charge for something that you don't own, well, you'd be breaking all sorts of rules. Because yes, it's nice that you built something that the devs haven't, but if you try to sell something based off of their work, you're technically stealing. But things have changed a lot since those early days of modding. And now game mods have become so complicated and so nuanced and so ambitious that the debate really does flare up every time something huge like this happens. Do modders deserve to have payment for their work? And if they did, what would that look like? So what I've actually done here, I've created a spreadsheet that will hopefully help nail down some of these points, just to kind of compare free mods versus paid mods. So let's just go ahead and take a look at this real quick. There it is. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and name this paid versus free mods discussion. And let's just change the perspective of this a little bit. Just so we're focused on the window a little more. Okay, so what the heck? I will go ahead and put this up here just for now, just so we can talk about it. So the first thing I want to state outright, I don't think anyone is honestly expecting that all mods should become paid overnight, or that all mods need to be charged for, because again, it's a matter of degrees. There are so many different types of mods. So it really becomes a multi-layered threshold of what does this deserve, what does that deserve, etc. So let's go down a couple of paths. Let's take the game that I'm most familiar with when it comes to mods, Terraria, as an example. So Terraria has a thriving mod community. They have people who have created a Tmod loader, its own separate software to host, create, and edit mods in conjunction to the normal Terraria software on Steam. And you can download it for free. You go in there, you can access every mod ever uploaded to it and play Terraria right there in your browser. Works just the same as Terraria. This is its own dedicated team of people who are updating it every time a new update for the main game comes out. And then you have your own separate teams for all these different mods that are creating their own separate things. And you have, your small people making stuff like, oh, I wanted a custom blade in Terraria. Here it is. Check it out. And then you have the really ambitious stuff, like Calamity. Calamity is so big of a mod, it almost eclipses the original game itself. You could argue that Calamity is just as big, if not bigger, than the original game. It's almost doubling the size. It's got music, bosses, new characters, music. It's just that music is just crazy good. And it's just a whole nother extension of the game. Greetings, Lizard. How you doing? And then the discussion becomes between these two extremes of mods. If there were to be a paid model, how would you treat these different mods? And my argument is that in a world, theoretically, if every single mod had to be paid, there is a threshold that people would pay for every single mod. For example, Calamity. I think it would not be unreasonable to ask for, say, $5 or $10 to play Calamity, because the original game is $5 to $10 depending on the platform, and Calamity is just as big of an extension. But honestly, it's just that complicates the whole process, because a whole team of people contributed together to make Calamity. Calamity is like a DLC. That's exactly right, Blizzard. And that's why the argument to say I would pay $5 to $10 for this is legitimate. Let's say the team of Calamity put this out and said, we're not going to give this out unless you pay $5 to $10 for it. There is a market for it because it's just that good. Now, let's say if they do that, what happens next? Well, here's the thing. They don't own Terraria, so that money cannot go to them legally. But let's say Relogic, the company that makes Terraria, says, you know what, we're going to join in on this. We're going to make a system where if you make mods, you can put the price that you decide, and we'll take a cut of that. So they'll say, we'll take 50% of everything that you ask for, because it is our game, and the other half is your work. So the modders would charge you $10, Relogic gets $5, the modders get $5, and then everyone splits it however they work it out. Technically speaking, that is a system that works. It makes sense. The controversy comes into, do modders deserve this in the first place? Do mods have the ability to work with money like this? And in this type of system, would the company allow the mods to have the unlimited control they need to make mods like this? And the answer to all three of these is no. And here's why. First and foremost, do mods deserve to be paid for their work? That's a controversial topic. Technically speaking, if you want to be paid for your work, that's a valid ask. But you have to think of the circumstances. You are taking somebody else's game, somebody else's IP, and you are transforming it and turning it into something else. Now, if it is transformative enough, you could argue that it is a brand new thing. For example, if I take a song and I take the style from it and I take some of the beats from it, I sample it and make my own song, that's totally okay. I've made my own song, I've just sampled this other one. I haven't stolen anything, I'm transforming it. But if I just take a cover of a song, same thing, I just sing it in my voice, maybe with a few twerks here and there, maybe some tweaking of the beats and the rhythm, that's a cover. I still don't own this song, I've just created my version of it, and I need permission to sell this song. And usually, music companies would have deals where you have to pay a license to use that. It's the same thing with the game. Unless you are transforming the game enough to a point where it is a completely different product, you cannot argue that you are transforming the game, because most mods are additive. They are adding to the game. New content, new characters, new bosses, new music, even Calamity, with how big and transformative it is still just an extension of Terraria. It is a DLC to Terraria. So technically, the mods are not creating something new, they're making something on top of something that already exists. Do they deserve to be compensated for their work? Absolutely. Anyone who you ask will probably say the same thing. There are mods out there that are just mind-bogglingly huge. Like, there was a mod where they transformed the entire city of San Andreas, I think it was, into an alien world where it was a completely different map, equally big, voice acting, new music, new assets, everything. It was crazy. It was basically a whole new game. That level of work, you should absolutely be paid for that. But they're not. They do it on their own time. They volunteer for it. And that's an important point. We'll get back to that a lot. Volunteering is such a big part of this discussion. But we'll get back to that. Second point that I originally brought up. Do mods have the right to ask for money if the company allows them to? Yes. The company is allowed to do whatever they want with their games. If they are demanding that anyone who mods their game has to pay for it, they have that right. It's their game, it's their IP. Is it kind of an uncool move? Yeah, but they can do it. They have that right. And number 3, my last original point, if you have mods creating all this extra content for the game, does the company have the right to control that content? Again, absolutely. And this is ultimately where I think paid mods hit their biggest wall. If you are going to get paid to make mods for a game, when money changes hands, you are now in a transaction with that IP, with that content. Which means you can't put Star Wars into Skyrim. You can't do that. Because Star Wars has a monetary value. If you steal it and put it into this game and you're getting paid for it, you're stealing. You're infringing on copyright. That's a problem. If it's free, there is no monetary value to what you're doing, so you have free reign. That's why you see mods that introduce crap like that. You can transform Skyrim into Lord of the Rings, and if it's free, there's not a damn thing they can do about it. Minecraft, let's make Avengers Tower, and then have Darth Vader dueling Gandalf while the freaking Enterprise is floating overhead. You can do that, because when it's free, you have unlimited range of ideas that you can use. So on that note, let's start filling out this chart a little bit, shall we? Okay. So, first pro for paid mods. Mods get paid. That's an easy one. Mods deserve to get paid. That's just a good thing. Which creates a con. Players have to pay for extra content. Big con right here. Mods are limited in what they can create. Company will control all matters of creativity, limiting mod ability. These are big ones because if a company is going to be working with mods to create mods, they will have the last say. And that's a really big deal. And then of course the big pro for free mods, unlimited creativity. There is no limit to what you can do with free mods because there's no limitations. You aren't going to get in trouble for combining all your favorite characters. Of course, the big con, nobody gets paid. But that means players have unlimited access to mods. Right. So that's a good start. Ooh. There we go. Okay. Revenge, Captain Sparkles. So here's a question I'd like to post to anyone who's watching. If mods were if mods were paid and there is a system with the company, how low of a price would you be willing to pay for even the simplest mod? Because I have a feeling that people would not be opposed to ridiculously low prices for mods. Greetings, Pokemaster. Welcome. We are just getting into the payment debate. So let me put a for instance to you. That earlier example we had in Terraria, you're going through the mods and you see one with a really cool sword that you want to add to the game. To use it, all you have to do is pay a single penny. If all it cost you to use this sword was a penny, would you pay it? Personally, that's an absurdly low price, and I would heavily consider it. Because, as we could see with a game like Terraria, you are using like dozens of mods at a time. And yes, the price can scale, but theoretically, if all of them were as a ridiculously low price as this, would you be willing to pay those ridiculously low prices to use these mods? Say I have 24 mods and they're all about 1 cent, even 5 cents. Let's say they're 5 cents. Only takes a nickel for each mod, because maybe they're adding quality of life stuff. And they're keeping it to 5 cents. Even if I'm using 24 mods, I'm only paying about $1. And then I have a massively increased enjoyment of my game because I'm using really good mods. So one of my biggest questions when it comes to the paid side, is there a threshold that if the payment for paid games, paid mods was low enough, would you be willing to pay it? Or is the very idea of paying for mods so abhorrent that you would demand them to be free regardless? Even if they were 1 penny per mod, would that still be too much for you to pay? That's something I'm very interested in hearing. And I don't hear a lot of people asking that question because everyone's talking about the debate of, well, should mods be just one more paid thing? Should they be a monetization? But there is a lot to be gained from a paid system. It motivates the mods to create higher quality stuff. You know, if they're motivated by payment, they are more dedicated to the task. The developers are going to get more money. It's a win-win for them, at least in the payment department. And while the players would technically have to pay more money to play their game, if the price was low enough, if it was reasonable enough, and it wasn't egregious like $10 per mod, would they be willing to pay that and still enjoy the game and the mods? I argue that there is a threshold that people would be willing to cross to make that happen. Because people get upset at the idea of, oh, you're charging me to do something that's been free for all this time. I get that. Of course, no one would be happy to suddenly be charged for something that was originally free. For example, let me think of an example. The internet. The internet used to be a quote-unquote free service that came with your phone. Your phone and your internet were on the same service. They just bundled them together because at the time no one thought internet would be what it was. The phone was vastly more important. And that's why when you use your phone, you kick people off the internet and vice versa. Old timers perspective. That was problems my parents dealt with. But as it became an industry, suddenly they discovered, oh, we should offer this as its own separate service, and we should start paying people for it to create its own market. And people naturally were upset that now they were charged for something that was previously free, or at least low cost. But that's just the reality of it. If something is free, people take it for granted. Take YouTube. YouTube had no ads for the longest time. That's why it grew so fast, and because it was a good idea. But as soon as YouTube started to make money, they had to start displaying ads, and more of them. And then they had to start putting banners in, and then they had to start putting the ads at the front of videos, and people didn't like that because ads aren't cool. But it was a reality that they needed that revenue to keep that company going, because you can't run a business without money. That's just the truth. But then people would counter that by saying, well, game mods aren't a business. Game mods are something that happens outside the threshold of the business of the game. Mods should never be paid because they're there just because we love the game and we're adding stuff to it. Why should we pay for something that has always been free because it's a volunteer basis? And we come back to that idea of volunteerism. People volunteer their time for all sorts of things, to help build houses, to feed people, to clean up. It would be nice if all volunteers were paid for their time. But the very idea of volunteering is the idea that you are doing it without the expectation of being paid. And game mods are the same way. You are going into it with the intrinsic agreement between everybody that you're doing it without any recognition besides people liking your mod. You're not expecting to be paid. You're not expecting to make a business for it. Because that's how it's always been. And not just that, it's the idea of, if you're going to volunteer your time, why should you turn around and charge people for something that everybody else isn't charging you for. Pokemaster says, I'm against paying for mods, but I also respect that the person wants to make money for doing what they do. But I think if a person wants to make some money, they should set up a Patreon or something else they can donate my money to and keep the mod free. It's a very interesting point and a very good one, too. Because everyone agrees that if a person wants to be paid for their time, they should be allowed to say so. But where they ask the money from is very important. Like, take this Pure Dark situation. He locked his mod behind a $5 a month subscription for Patreon. He said, if you want the mod, you gotta subscribe to my Patreon. And that was fair. That's fair. He made the mod. Pardon me. Forgot my phone was not on silent. Anyway. Back to it. He made the mod. And he said, I'm not giving it out unless you pay for it. Technically speaking, it's his work. He has the right to do that. But he also based it off of Starfield. So shouldn't Starfield get a cut of that too? Because it's their game. Make a subscription-based mod. That's a good idea. But shouldn't Starfield or whatever game you're modding deserve that money too? Because you wouldn't have a mod without their game. They've invested thousands of hours, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars into this game. They've made this product, and then you come in, take this product, tweak it a little bit, and are now trying to sell a different version of it. Granted, you're only selling a tiny piece. You're selling a mod. You're only tweaking this little bit right here. But you still wouldn't have this little piece without their investment. So if you're going to be making any money off of their investment, they absolutely deserve a piece of that pie, no matter how small it is. Because let's take my game, Racer Royale, that I'm making. Let's say they're making mods for it. If suddenly they were charging people for it and I didn't see any of that money, I would be pissed. Because they're charging for a version of my game. It seems like I should get a cut of that. I put a lot of time and effort into my game. If they're going to change my game and then charge for it, I deserve a piece of that. Because you wouldn't have this version of the game without my game, you know? And that's understandable. That's how it works. It's how music works. You can't use people's music without permission. It's a bummer in a lot of cases, but that's just how it is. And that's why mods have remained free for so long, because as soon as money enters the equation, everything changes. And Pokey says, I think that's more of an argument about who owns the rights to user-generated content, the game devs or the creator. That is such a great point. And then the discussion reaches yet a whole nother field. With user-created content, who owns it? And in what circumstances? That is such a great point. Because let's take Calamity again from Terraria. Terraria undoubtedly is owned by Relogic. It's their game. But what about Calamity? Calamity is a set of so many assets and music and coding and other things that were made for that game. Relogic didn't make any of that. The modders did. Calamity undoubtedly belongs to the modders. But the product of Terraria with a Calamity mod, that's where the confusion lies. Undoubtedly, the modders deserve to have credit for their assets, and undoubtedly Terraria has the right to the original game. But when they mesh together, who has the rights to that experience. Is it dual ownership? Or does it default to Relogic because the entire thing would not be possible without them? Legally speaking, saying as I'm not a lawyer, my guess would be if this were to be taken to a court of law, it would be argued, logically speaking, that both would have a right to that money. That, yes, Relogic undoubtedly has the rights to the game itself and any money made off of it, but the user content assets specifically belong to the people. But the revenue generated from that experience would go to Relogic. Because without an agreement from the original game, they have the rights to anything made off of that. It's the same thing with covers in music, right? Somebody makes a cover of Don't Stop Believin'. Even if it's completely different from Journey's version, Journey still is going to take all the money from that. Unless they get an agreement, the person pays for the license to use Don't Stop Believin', and then they can, sell the cover for their version of money. That's why you see covers of songs all the time across the media. Like, Blink-182 did a cover of a Modern English's song, I'll Melt With You. Obviously, Modern English is going to get a cut for that money, but Blink-182 is still able to ship that as part of their album because they made an agreement with Modern English so that both of them would make money off of it. And game development, I think, should work most the same way. An agreement has to be made between the parties. That way both sides can benefit in a mutual understanding of where the money should go. Pokey continues, it should default to the mod team, but they have to have Terraria in there. It's like when you use RPG Maker to make a game. You have to credit them, but anything you make is to you. I think that's how it works. Indeed, the tools utilized to create what you did. And for like a game engine, that totally makes sense. You should give credit to Unity or to Unreal Engine. Without them, you wouldn't have a creation. So you have to give them a payment. But the agreement has been established beforehand. You pay Unity based on the agreement that you signed up for when you download the software. Or for Unreal. The contract that you sign is what creates that binding agreement. You will pay Unity this amount of money if you reach this threshold. You will pay Unreal this threshold. The problem with most mods is that no such agreement exists because no one's ever established one before. Bethesda did try once. Technically it was Valve, but it was Valve through Bethesda. And they attempted to make a system where mods would get 25% of the revenue for mods that they create for Skyrim on Valve. And people lost their minds. People were so pissed about that because the whole why should we make mods for you if it's just going to be another business model? And I have to argue that people overreacted because they were trying something new. They were trying to establish a way for the community to make mods and get paid for it while still giving a fair share to the mods. I don't know if 25% is a fair share. I would argue it has to be closer to even. But that's a whole nother thing. Pokey continues, let's assume Calamity Mod became a paid mod. I don't think Relogic should get any money because Terraria is already there. They didn't make any Calamity sprites or anything, and Terraria is already half paid, so they are getting their credit. Well, they're already getting paid, so they're getting their credit. You want Calamity, you have to buy Terraria first, and then buy Calamity. I think the more gray area starts when you make a paid mod for a free game. Ooh, that's an interesting point. That's true. Terraria is already getting paid for that game. In order to play Calamity, you have to buy Terraria first. So anything on top of that, should they deserve a cut of it? Because they're already getting their cut from that player. Oh, that's a really good point. You can definitely make that argument. Why should they get a bigger cut from a person's wallet for a mod when they've already got the game purchased from the player? Ooh. And then, of course, that brings up the topic of, would free games have the same problem? I would agree that if it's a free game and then you're doing paid mods, you have a problem. Because free game is already giving it to you with the understanding that this is free for everyone to use. There should be no transaction made unless you're doing our whole monetization thing. And then for someone to come in and make a version of this game that is paid, that's straight up scummy. That would be crossing the line for sure. I think most people would agree for that, yeah. But man, that is a really good, that's a really good caveat. Why? Let's say Calamity's $10, Terraria's $10. Someone pays Relogic $10 to play Terraria, and then another $10 to play Calamity. They've already paid twice the price of the game. But why should Terraria get more money than they are charging for the game, when the other half of that charge came from content that they didn't create? Then the argument they would make was probably, well, you don't have a product unless you have our product first. You don't have Terraria Calamity without the Terraria. Ooh, that would come down to legal semantics. It really would. How would you divide the line between something that is adding to a previous game versus how much of that mod is possible without the original game? Because we can all agree that Calamity is nothing without Terraria. The whole system is based on Terraria's system. And if you're making a game that is entirely outside of another game, that's not a mod, that's another game, you know? And you would have total right to sell that. You could make a Terraria carbon copy. You could write the code from the ground up, recreate Terraria just with different stories and with tweaks and quality of life mods. Now, you'd probably be in trouble for straight up stealing their idea, but you'd be making a whole nother game. And so long as you didn't steal any of their assets or their code, you might be okay legally. But at that point, you're making your own game, so that's kind of a moot point. Doesn't really matter. The only discussion that matters is, do mods that transform the original game deserve the whole cut or just a piece of the cut? Man, I wonder if there's like a precedent for this that we could think of, because that's such a great point. Because let's take music again. I keep defaulting to music because it's the best thing I can think of. Sampling music, right? A Vanilla Ice. He samples Queen, right? Dun 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 dun. He takes that beat, he tweaks it a little bit, puts it into his song, and completely makes it a new song. When people sample stuff, they don't have to credit the original author. They don't have to pay them a license, because all they're doing is sampling it. They're not taking the whole song and then just putting it out there. They're taking a piece of it and completely warping how it's used in the song. Now, obviously, there's a line to that. If you sample a large enough piece or you're just doing the whole song again, that's stealing. But you can definitely argue that no matter how similar Vanilla Ice's beat is to Queen's, it's a completely different song and use of that beat. So he doesn't have to pay Queen royalties. Queen does not own that beat, that rhythm. They own the song. They don't own the notes or the beat. And then the argument becomes, how much of it do they own? And then, would you consider mods to be sampling of a game? I don't think you could. Because you're taking the whole game and you're just adding onto it. So that argument wouldn't fly. I think, and it's a big thing if I remember right, the legal precedent with this is Dota 2 and Blizzard. Blizzard sued Valve over Dota 2 because the original Dota was made in Warcraft 3's community tool. Oh man, and that's another great point. So many games have come from other games. Counter-Strike led to freaking Half-Life, which led to Gary's mod. You know? And like you said, Warcraft 3 led to Dota 2. You know, a lot of these games are born by modding other games, which are then transformed into whole other games. Strangely enough, most of this happened in Valve, which is just saying something. It says a lot. But, does the argument become... There, I think it's pretty straightforward. So long as it's a transformative enough work, you can totally say that's a whole nother game. That's the sampling argument, right? Yeah, Gary's mod takes the structure of Half-Life, takes the whole engine that it was made to use it. But if anyone says that Gary's mod is the same game as Half-Life, they're freaking high, because that is a whole nother different game. Not to mention, it's a game built on user-generated content to begin with. So there, the line is far enough away from the original game that they're totally in the clear. And it helps that it's from the same company making their own content. But regardless, Dota is a perfect example of that. Dota had every right to do what they did. It was a totally different game from Warcraft 3. Dota 2 basically invented the MOBA. Whereas Warcraft 3 is not a MOBA. Not even close. Excuse me. So, you know, it's like if you took Minecraft and turned it into a first-person shooter, you're still using Minecraft's system, and it's still the game. But how far do you have to transform Minecraft before it becomes a different game? Because all the mods I've played so far, they're just different versions of Minecraft. Minecraft with more versions attached. But at which point, when you're using Minecraft's engine to create a game, how far would you have to go to say, this is no longer Minecraft? You would have to go pretty dang far, but it is possible. Let's say you took Minecraft and made, for example, what's a good idea? Hell, a racing game. No bosses, no crafting. You just have cars that are shaped like Minecraft, and they have the same physics as Minecraft. Everything looks like Minecraft, but it's different textures, different characters. There's no skeletons, there's no creepers. It looks like Minecraft. It's the same engine that built Minecraft, but you've made a racing game out of it. That's a different game. That's not Minecraft anymore. I can't craft anymore. I can't find diamond in the ground. You know, and obviously you can make racing games in Minecraft, but if you took the engine of Minecraft and just built a racing game from the ground up and didn't include any of the original features of Minecraft, you would be in the clear, supposedly, because you've made a whole different game. And you can charge people for it because you've made something all your own. You just used a tool. Now, probably Minecraft probably owns the tool they use to make it, so that's just a very vague example. But just as a for instance, the Dota 2 community tool made the auto chess genre, and Valve made their own game, Dota Underlords, but the Dota auto chess community tool and their lords are both different things, and Valve doesn't own the game in their community tool section thing. Very true. Roblox. Oh, man, what a space in this topic that explains, because Roblox is essentially providing an engine and everybody makes whatever they want in that engine, and the creativity is unlimited. But at the end of the day, Roblox does this with the understanding that they own the engine, so anything you make with our engine, we own. So you can't sell like Roblox doors. You can't sell doors. You would have to create doors by yourself, which ironically might be a really good idea. And then you have the whole in-game economy where you're like, okay, you can charge players to play this game, but they have to do it through Robux. And you know who controls the economy of Robux? Roblox. Because that's a brilliant system. In order to, to make money, Roblox developers have to use the Robux system, which does give them money, but so does Roblox. So that's a whole economy that Roblox has created for itself, and that's why it's so successful. And then you think about games that take the concept of a game. That's a... Pokey, you and I are on the same wavelength. I was just about to jump into Pokemon. All of the different Pokemons that are custom made, Pokemon Uranium, Pokemon Nuzlocke, or just all the ones that make their own sets of Pokemon, you go on their own Pokemon adventure. Are they stealing Pokemon? Well, if you take enough of the original features, then yeah. You got Pokeballs, you got the Poke System, same types. Doesn't matter if you add more, it's still the original game concept. How far does Pokemon have to change in order to not be a Pokemon game? And if you do, is there a point to calling it a Pokemon game anymore? That's the point. If you transformed a Pokemon game to a point where you could no longer call it Pokemon and be safe from copyright, there's no point calling it a Pokemon fan game anymore. So, the team that made Pokemon Uranium made their own game with its own story, own characters, but that got taken down by Nintendo. And let's be fair, some companies are a bit more petty about this than others. Nintendo is so protective of their copyright. They're so protective of it, they would punish people who are just doing tournaments of their game. You know, that's overprotective. And that's just where we are with Nintendo. So, let's bring this back. Should Calamity get all the money from a paid mod version of their mod, or does Relogic deserve a cut of it? Obviously, they don't deserve the whole cut. That would be ridiculous. No one would agree to that. The 50-50 split, I think, is fair. Because there is an argument to say, yes, we made the entire asset, we made the entire mod, we deserve all the money. But you also have to remember, it's not possible to make the mod without the original game. And if they're going to make money off of it, Relogic deserves a cut. Because for the mods to get all the money is unfair to the developers. The players would be in the same situation either way. So you have to make it so that both the mods and the devs are not getting screwed in that situation. And then we get back to the topic of how pricey they should be, and we've already talked about that. So, okay. So let's get back to our chart here. Let's add a few items to it really quick. Okay. So, pros and cons of paid. Pros. Developers make more money if they get a cut, or if they get a cut. That's good. Cons. Mods will likely not be able to get the entire cut of what they charge. That's just the reality, right? Because there's no way you would set up a system like this and the company wouldn't take a cut. It's just not realistic. Pros. Quality of mods would likely be a lot higher because you're in it with money, right? When money gets involved, people are more motivated to make this work. Con. There would be less mods because less people well, hold on. Before I put that down, would there be less or more mods if they were paid? I mean, let's say the same number of people made Terraria mods and they charged that. There's a caveat here. Depending on price of mods, this would affect number of mods that players would actually use. So this could be most likely less mods would be played overall due to prices. That there would be a big caveat there, but I think that's important to note. This, hold on. This would help mods establish a professional resume to help their careers. But that's true on both cases. Creativity leads to great experience for the mods. It's a different type of experience, right? Because if you make mods, period, you're getting experience in game development. If you're getting paid for it, you can say in your resume, I made mods for Bethesda and I got paid for it. And that would be something you could show in a resume. You could do that too for the free version. It just wouldn't be as established, so to speak, as this. So just another thing to note. A con for free mods. For paid mods. Malicious actors would try to take advantage of this system. Undoubtedly, somebody is going to break the system. Someone's going to try to sneak in content that they don't own, or they're going to put in like something that seems like a really great mod, put malicious code in it and crash the system, and suddenly everybody's paying for it. I don't know if my statement on this is clear or not, but I don't think mods should be paid. Right. Because, yeah, you mentioned that if they were paid, you would want them to have the full payment. But yeah, I think you were clear from the start that you think mods should be free. And I'm going to be honest, I'll have another argument for this, but I'm leaning towards that as well. Because there's another big con here. Money complicates the entire process and changes the motivation. I wanted that in writing because I don't think I said it. Okay, fair enough. I totally get it. This is a big one right here. Money complicates the entire process and changes the motivation. Misspelled motivation. It's so true. When money changes hands, everything changes. Because one of the biggest points of mods is that you're doing it because you love the game. You want to make it a better game. You want to add something to it. It's that volunteer thing again. You want to help make the game better. But if you're doing it just to get paid, then you're doing it for the money, not necessarily to make the game better. You're doing it because you think you'll get money. And that changes the concept, quality, and purpose of your mod. Because Calamity came out as a love letter to Terraria. This is how much bigger we can make Terraria. Look at the things we can do with it. Look at all these cool boss ideas we came up with. Check out this awesome music we had someone make for it. But if they were paid to do that, they're saying, check out this great product we made for you. Changes the entire tone. Undoubtedly. That's a big pro over here. Motivation for creating mods is uncompromised and done for the love of the game. Big one. That's such a big one. Greater number of mods overall and more likely to be played by players. A big con for free mods is people have to go out of their way to support you. That's true. I can put that in. People have to go out of their way to support you and the mod. You have to go through the work of creating a community, which means that most of the time, only the most popular mods get that constant support, get that constant release schedule, etc. Because every game can point to a mod that said that once did something awesome for the game, but was never updated because the person behind it didn't have the time, didn't have the motivation, they didn't get enough support. It's just a reality of the process. Let's see. Let's talk about free mods for a little bit, because we've been talking about paid mods for a while. What's one of the bigger things about free mods that we haven't talked about yet? We've talked about how the creativity of free mods is so much more untethered. You can do anything you want there. We've talked about the fact that because there's no money involved, there's no bad motivations. Let's see, what's another point about free mods? Because obviously most of the conversation revolves around the paid side of things because of how complicated it is. But I think it's important for free mods to get discussion as well. Let's see. It's creativity, software, larger communities, perhaps? I've already included that. More variety. More variety. I'm going to put that down. That technically could be part of the unlimited creativity part, but more variety really comes into play here. Because if people were being paid for mods, they would always do the most popular ideas. Like Terraria, they would all be fishing mods. Or they'd all be boss mods. Or they'd all be weapon mods. Where's my mod changing the color of the clouds? You know, no one's going to do that for being paid for it, but someone will do it for free because they're like, F it, I could just make this. The variety for this, because again, motivation, creativity. When there's nothing weighing you down, the sky's the limit. More variety in mods. I will give a pro to the paid side. Something that I think is important to note, that motivating players to create content for the game helps the economy of the game. Because every game that has a mod community is healthier and bigger because of it. So motivating people to contribute to the game is a good idea business-wise. It's like, we don't have a lot of people interested in making mods for our game. What if we paid them to do it? Then you might inspire a whole wave of people to make mods for your game, and then you have more people playing. There is something to that. Free mods are easier to find, because if I see something that costs money, oftentimes I just click away. I like that. I'll call it like this. People are more used to free mods, so they are more likely to find and use them. Argument. I don't know if that's a paid pro or just a mod pro. I think by calling it motivating people to make mods, encouraging them to make mods. Can you encourage players to make mods without paying them? I mean, yeah. Bethesda loves people modding their game, but then they try to create a system for it. Terraria has to love it too, right? That by not interfering, they're technically encouraging it. I think you're right. I think encouraging is possible without payment. So let's be more specific with the clause. Let's say it provides motivation for creating mods. I think that's as complicated as I can make it. If you're on Steam, the best way to encourage modding is just opening Steam Workshop. If it's not on Steam, then things get a bit iffy. That's so true. Putting it on Steam and opening the workshop is like the best way for that to work. But I guess that's a platform thing. So, well, I can't think of anything else. And thinking through it, there are a couple things that I think also need to be brought up that are kind of obvious when you think about it, but I should state them otherwise. If you have somebody that's breaking the rules of a paid mod, money is changing hands, and somebody does something dumb, like puts Darth Vader in your game, and there is no clause to protect against that, maybe the company overlooked it, Disney is going to come in like a wrecking ball and just demolish somebody. They don't care who. They most likely wouldn't go after the modder either. In that specific scenario, they'd probably go after the company, because they didn't protect their game from violating copyright. And who's going to be able to pay them for that violation? The company. The modder is not going to pay for it. How would they? They don't have any money. Now, if the company does put a clause in, then yes. The company can just punish the modder, and then Disney would be satisfied. But they still might ask for a fine. It's a whole legal thing. It's just another can of worms you don't want to deal with. You don't want to put the company in danger. Imagine if Uranium was a paid fan game. That would be horrible for them. Absolutely. The instant you start charging for something that you know is illegal, that is copyright infringement, you are just asking for trouble. Because you are going to get hit eventually. And the longer you go, the worse it's going to be. Because let's be honest, Call of Duty hosting servers for old games, those servers that hosted for the older games, they are a treasure to the community. But they don't have the right to do that. So when Activision told them to cease and desist, they had no choice. Now, Activision shouldn't have touched them because it helped their freaking games survive, but they had every right to ask them not to do that. And that's the same with any copyrighted infringement, right? And if you're going into territory where you're stealing from other companies' content, oh my god, you are just creating a crap storm of trouble. So, oh god, imagine if you created a Pokemon fan game that had FNAF characters and Super Smash Brother characters and just a whole universe of characters. It's like, what are you doing? You know? And then you charged $5.99 for the experience. Oh god. Could you imagine? Oh, that would be just like, they would bomb that thing off the internet. Whether or not companies should touch free things held together fans, I think, is a different argument, and one we probably don't need to have. You're right. That's a whole nother thing. It's funny you say that. There's a Pokemon ROM hack with everything being Yu-Gi-Oh characters. Really? Oh my god, that's hilarious. And see, that's just, you're just asking for trouble. If you ask for money for that. For free, I mean, you know, it's not hurting anybody. And that's a whole other thing. The last thing I wanted to bring up was something that was actually brought to my attention before I started this stream. I was talking with a couple people. I was talking with my sister about what they thought about the whole situation. And she brought up the most wonderful point that could even... It's like, wow, can't believe I didn't even think about that. When you are volunteering your time to do something for somebody else, to then ask for money to do that it's not acceptable. It's like if you went to what's it called? A soup kitchen, and you helped feed people and then said, you should pay me for my time here. It's like, no. The whole point is that you volunteer your time to do this. And the community and expectation that we have created with mods is that you can create whatever you want, but it has to be free. That's the expectation, because that is the invisible, silent agreement that we have all put ourselves to. This way, nobody gets hurt. No lines are crossed, nobody's taken advantage of, and everybody wins. And that's why my ultimate decision here, just like you, Pokey, is that mods should remain free. Yes, when you hear people say, shouldn't mods be paid for their time, your instinct is like, well, of course they should, especially when they do something so astronomically huge. But here's the thing about that. They chose to make that with the expectation that they would not be paid. They didn't do it because they were expecting to make money. They were doing it because they wanted to. They were doing it because they love Minecraft and wanted to make more Minecraft. They wanted to make more GTA or more BioShock or more Gary's mod, you know? They wanted to make more of the game that they love and just go deeper and figure out what else can we do? How else can we play with this? You know? At the end of the day, mods being free is just better for everyone. It creates a healthy community for your game that adds more people to the entire experience. It's good for the developers because the game is having a larger audience in general. It's good for players because they have so much more content to explore and have fun with. And it's good for mods because they're practicing making great content. Their creativity is just exploding and they can do whatever they want with it. And that helps them. If they want to be game developers in the future, this is perfect experience for them. Woo! And even if they're not going to be game developers, they still win because they got to have their idea come to life and put it out there for everyone to play. They made their idea real. What more satisfaction can you get than that? You know? Woo! Pokebastard says, yeah, that's a big thing. And why the modding community gets pissed when someone hops on the forum and says, look what they did, and locks it behind a payroll. It's just rude. Agreed. I think it's totally fine to have a Patreon and release early content that's then free later. Because really, if your mod is good enough, then people will look to support you because they want to see you grow. Agreed. I would agree with the Patreon thing being early release. Because in that instance, you're doing it with the promise that, yeah, everyone can play it later, but the people who pay for it get to do it before everybody else. I mean, that's fair. And then people will probably hop on that argument and says, well, it shouldn't be paid in the first place, and then we're just back to square one. But I still think that's acceptable. And yeah, if your mod is good enough for people to have the discussion of whether you should be paid or not, you've already won. So, and yeah, the idea of being able to pay mods for their time to create such beautiful content is a good one. And it's okay for people to have it. But the reality is, once money enters the equation, as I said before, everything changes. Because then the motivation for it changes, the economy changes, the community shifts, and the amount of mods you can create completely gets limited. The developer has to get involved. It's the only way it's fair. And then, let's not forget, props, the biggest problem of it all, it takes away the fun of it. If you want to get paid for your creations, just make a game. You know? Just make something. Don't make a mod and then say, I should be paid for this. Because that's not how it works. And this argument will probably go on forever. But I've looked at polls across YouTube, and I saw one where people asked, should mods be paid or free? And the result was almost unanimously free. 95% of the people who voted on this poll that I saw said mods should be free. Which just goes to show just how one-sided this argument tends to be. Yes, it's complicated. And yes, it would be nice if they got paid for it. But it would also be nice if people got paid for just making YouTube videos and tweets and stuff like that. It's just not how money works. I think we can all agree that it's a sad reality that it has to change like that as soon as money becomes the equation. Yeah, that's so true. Money is nice. Money is something everyone wants and needs. But with money comes so much baggage, so much limitations. You want money? You gotta work for it. You gotta go to a job that sucks. Or you have to have something that nobody else has. And then we just get into the whole discussion of where money comes from, and I'm too tired to talk about that. Okay, so I'm happy we made this chart. We could always add to it later, just a fun little comparison between them. But I think we really did come to a nice conclusion here, that when it comes down to it, there's just so much more reason for a game to be, or a game mod to be free than to be paid. Because once it's paid, it's not a mod anymore. It's a product. And that just ruins it. Pokemaster says, I think money being in there would also mean that the modding community at large wouldn't be as big as it is if it was changed earlier, because I think technically it is just against their terms of service at large. The fanfic community had this problem too with people charging for their work. Man, that's so true. One of the most beautiful things about any media or kind of like fandom is just the love that comes out of it with fan-made content. It's just an expression of how much people love the game. And mods are just a more specific version of that. To taint that with, well, now you gotta charge for it, ruins the entire concept of a fandom. What's the point of creating this fan content with the expectation that you're going to get paid for it? The whole point is that you love this game enough to make something for it, regardless of that point. Yeah, it really is. Writing a book about Scowl Calamity Mod hanging out with Sans Undertale really is the same as modding Sans into Terraria or something. Right? I mean, yeah, that's just a whole nother thing. It's all connected, man. And it's beautiful the way it is. Let's not ruin a good thing, right? So Pure Dark, who made this DLSS mod for Starfield, shame on you. And any other person who asks for paid mods, there is a world where you can ask for paid mods. And I can't really say you can't ask for money, but you really shouldn't. Because you're not doing anyone any good. Whew! That actually reminds me of paid content where mod add-ons fall under the line because there are so many mods that add on to other mods. Oh my god, yeah. And then imagine that if mods were paid and then you had mods building on other mods. Wait, there's a if I remember correctly, there is a Half-Life mod that is so big that it is universally used to help make other mods. I think it's like Blue Mesa or whatever it's called, but it's like, if you paid for that, that's a whole nother can of worms. Should you pay the modder for using the mods? With the mod of a game that you don't know? It's like a mod of a game that's a mod of another game. It's like, oh my god, just stop. You just love the game, damn it. Oh, that's fun. That's a funny idea. What would happen if the Skyrim body mods became paid? What would happen to anything that was ever used those meshes? Oh man. Oh god. See, this is the whole idea of I just had it in my head. NFTs? Is that what I was actually thinking about? No, that's a whole different thing. I was thinking of when you start charging people for everything that you create, every little thing, you put a copyright stamp on it, and you just get so defensive of all your stuff, all the creativity vanishes. That's right. I remember what I was going to say. Public domain. The fact that people have broken the rules of public domain to the point where Mickey Mouse will not enter public domain ever is like, you are just destroying creativity. Copyright rules now last for so long that you will never be able to have public domain for anything that's created in the modern era. Which means that the ability to create more things is stifled. And people are so protective these days. It's just reached absurd levels. And this is just another microcosm of that, right? You can't take something like this and slap a copyright on that too. Don't trademark mods. Don't lock it behind some name. It destroys creativity. It destroys variety and innovation. if everyone was not able to just have fun with things, nothing new would ever come about it. Capitalism stifles creativity. You know what? That's actually so damn true. It hurts. And with that happy note, I think we can end it right there. That was a good hour-and-a-half discussion. I'm very satisfied with that. I think we broke that down very well. So I will go ahead and end the podcast there. I think we've had ourselves a nice little back and forth. Thank you very much, Pokey, for all your points. It's much appreciated. When I get around to it, it's a very busy time in my life. I will try to turn this into an edited, more digestible version for YouTube. Just got to get through the next couple weeks. Sister's wedding's next week, so I'm very busy right now. But otherwise, very fun discussion. So glad we got to talk about it. And I'm so glad we got to, explore the what ifs, more stuff to talk about. Sometimes you just got to sit down and talk about something you're passionate about. That's good. See, it's fun to talk about stuff you care about. Sometimes people underrate talking. I'm like, sometimes just sit in a chair and just have at it while listening to fun music. In any case, I will let you guys go. I got to prepare for the next stream at 6:30. We'll be playing Terraria multiplayer. Today's going to be the Wall of Flesh. Should be a lot of fun. In any case, thank you all so much for a wonderful stream, wonderful podcast. I will see you all next time. And until then,